So, Mike, I think the term machine as a service is becoming a little more familiar in the industry, particularly to equipment builders. When it comes to a company that's an ideal fit for a machine as a service program, are you seeing like any particular company size or industry, for example? What are some that you think are a best fit?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we think the concept of machine as a service is relatively broad based in the manufacturing sector. So we think there's a lot of areas that it can fit. In the early stages, what we've seen are kind of the best in class kind of service providers, and not just the organizations that are trying to market the lowest cost machines, but the ones that historically look at their role as supporting their customer throughout the entire life cycle. Machine as a service is very attractive to those types of OEMs because it's a very efficient mechanism to track the performance of those assets over that life cycle, and get rewarded for your ability to assist your customer achieving the results that they're looking for. So I would say OEMs with deep domain expertise that have a real keen understanding of how they help the customer, what the value proposition that they're offering, that it's more than just machines, it's the service department, it's the ability to get the spares and repairs out to them. It's the confidence that they can warranty their technology because they know it's engineered for the purposes that it's being applied. It's the ability to consult when there are challenges achieving production goals, that they're a contributing member of the team that is looking at how to improve the end performance. And there are also the organizations that see their job not just as deliver the machine, move on to the next customer and try and sell another one, but how do we help improve the assets that we already have in the field? How do we improve the performance of our customers and our existing installed base machinery within their organization? But oftentimes those organizations have difficulty putting together the business model for how they bill for those things. And so they too often wrap it up and bundle it up in the upfront price of their machine,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. And certainly there's many customers that understand that value and are willing to pay a premium for that equipment. But as the market gets more competitive and as people change jobs more frequently, that kind of reputation-based selling just isn't as effective as it used to be. And so a new solution is needed to really market your technology and your machinery in a way that connects directly to the total cost of ownership over the life cycle of the asset, in a way that's profitable for you as an OEM, but it is also very easy to articulate to the end user in terms that they think, which is how much is it going to cost me per unit to produce my product. So I know that's a mouthful. There's a lot in there, but I'd say in summary, what this does is create a whole host of new ways to market your technology, where the traditional capital procurement acquisition process that most OEMs focus on is a one size fits all that doesn't necessarily work in the advantage of some of the best machine builders in the world.
Would it be fair to say one summary of what you just said is that the best OEMs with the best domain expertise in their industry are the best fit for machine as a service?
Yeah, absolutely. That
All right.
probably, a much more succinct, and the rest of it is just the reason why, right?
I mean, hey, that's why I'm the marketing guy on the team. So no, that was great. I love the detail. I love tying it in with total cost of ownership. Now that we kind of have a picture painted of who an ideal fit equipment manufacturer is for a machine as a service program, what's the checklist look like? What are the must-haves that an OEM needs to be ready to go through this machine as a service journey and start implementing?
So I think domain expertise is the biggest one, right? You need to understand your market. You need to understand your customers, and not just on a superficial level, right? When you evaluate the potential of a client and put together a machine as a service package for them, you want to be very confident that you could help solve their problem, and you also want to understand what you think it's going to take to solve that problem and make sure you can put together a valuable bundle, a machine as a service program that includes all the things that they're going to need in a way that it's profitable for you as a business. So you have to understand the cost to support your customer to help them achieve that mission. And we see on the end user side that there's more and more of a desire for that kind of partnership, that kind of relationship with their OEMs, especially as, you know, one of the big constraints that they have is finding the skilled labor and the expertise that they need to keep this equipment running at high production levels. And so, you know, oftentimes the real return on investment of these machines over their life cycle, you know, very much includes your ability to run them as frequently as possible and as high a speed as possible. And if your OEM, you know, can work with you and contribute to that, the incremental cost that support implies is vastly overwhelmed by the value of that incremental production that you're achieving from those assets.
Love that. Again, going with the domain expertise. You know, I'm thinking about this from the perspective of an OEM that's thinking about going through with a machine as a service program for the first time. And I'm sure one of the things that would be crossing my mind is financials. What are the, you know, how do you finance a machine as a machine as a service program? What are the must-haves or the checklist from that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, there's really multiple options there, Chris. So machine as a service, the best way to think about it is not a single thing, but a collection of business models, right? And we would characterize it as an umbrella term that contains any business model where the payments are made over time based on machine performance. So that may be, I sell the machine in the traditional sense for an upfront fixed price. The title transfers, the customer owns the machine, but it's bundled with a post-sale service contract that also pays on an operating basis to support that life cycle cost of the machine, which may be, you know, post-sale services, warranties, parts and repair, consumable products, the whole host of things that really contributes to the performance of the asset over time. It may also be, and there's certainly examples with the partners that we have in the space today, where they want to participate in the financing of it. So they're taking the capital risk. They're not transferring the title of the machine. They're really allowing the customer to use the machine on a machine as a service basis, and they're being paid for both the capital carrying costs as well as the insurance or warranty of performance, as well as all the service necessary to keep it running, all bundled into a single per unit charge or per minute of availability, or a combination of both.
Awesome. And I think where you started just nailed it home for me, where it's like, think of it as a collection of business models where you're tying payments to performance. It's not one single thing, but can be a fit for, you know, whatever the business might be.
Yeah, you know, the SteamChain platform is really it's really an automated business process engine that allows you to utilize the data, the KPIs on the machine, to build and craft business models that meet your customers' requirements. And so we've constructed everything from, you know, pay up front for the machine, package stuff, to, you know, no money down. We ship you the machine, you run it, you pay us as you're running it. We can consult and help on the financing of it. So we can bring third-party partners in that have an interest in financing the equipment, so that the asset is not owned by either the end user or the OEM, that a third-party financing company holds the asset on their balance sheet, and anything in between. And that's just kind of I'd say the more common ones. Other things that we've seen people do, using what I'd call machine as a service business models, is instead of looking at the machine as a holistic entity, to build features and functionality into the machine that you deliver when you sell the machine, but the customer can choose to turn on when and if they need them down the road. So you're building in upgradability, which creates another revenue stream for you as your customers evolve with your equipment. A lot of times those features and functionality are software based, So they don't add to the cost of the machine, but you want to get value out of the investment that you've made in software to enable those features. This is an excellent way to do that. And that's another example of a machine as a service business model.
So we've got the domain expertise. We've checked that off. We've got the financial checklist. Here's the other thing I would probably be thinking of. Technology. Is there a particular platform that you play well with? What type of technologies need to be in place to get a machine as a service program up and running?
Yeah, so our reference architecture supports all major brands of industrial automation architectures. But the one thing that is very useful, although it's not required, is connectivity to the machine, right? Which we see as certainly being more and more accepted nowadays, to have a direct connection to the machine. We do that in a number of different ways. We can, of course, use the hardwired local internet at the end user. If that's how they want to structure it. We also do cellular and Wi-Fi connectivity. And so that is something that certainly makes the fidelity of the data much higher. We do have solutions that allow kind of a man-in-the-middle approach, where the data is periodically collected off the machine manually and transmitted manually. So we can support architectures that don't have a network connection, but I'd say generally speaking, the vast majority of our clients are offering machines with connectivity, which of course brings the other added values of remote support, a team of experts that built the machine that are monitoring the performance of the machine, right? Because it's in their financial interest to help you be successful. So we really see end users that are looking at machine as a service, also really understanding the value of connected machinery.
So I love that connectivity isn't a deal breaker on that. That's one of the biggest things I heard on that. It certainly can make things easier, but it doesn't, eliminate you.
We're strong proponents of the value of connected machinery, right? And what we think actually machine as a service is the argument for why it creates value for the end user, why it creates value for the OEM. The reason why you put connectivity on your machine is so that you can have that collaboration. We don't think connectivity, we don't think the rationale for connectivity is some kind of artificial intelligence algorithm that magically makes your machine run better. We think what it does is share the data between the parties that have a stake in making that machine run better, so that the incentives and motivations are very clear and very objective, and that everybody comes to the table with shared goals, with aligned interests.
Well, I mean, you're right. I can't really think of a better example of why data and connectivity is valuable, because you're literally tying performance data to dollars with this model.
That's correct. Yep.
As we wrap up on the checklist, there's some cultural elements I'm curious about as well. Let's start with mindset. Is there a particular mindset like a equipment manufacturer needs to have to go for something like this?
Machine as a service is certainly not a fit, and nor we suggest it's a fit in every single scenario. But we think there's major segments of the market that are gonna adopt this technology and this methodology, because we think the value proposition for both the OEM and the end user is very strong, because it's much more transparent incentives, and it eliminates a lot of the complexity that really makes investment in automation difficult for end user customers, right? It's risk management. And so, OEMs that see the world, that OEMs that understand their business is really tied to their ability to help their customers achieve their goals, are the OEMs that get the concept of machine as a service and how it will help them, right? Because it helps recognize them for the contributions that they make to their customer base. And not just delivering the machine on time, but delivering it on time, starting it up on time, achieving production goals on time and reliably throughout its entire life cycle, and addressing inevitable problems that are going to occur, right? The best machinery builders in the world still have challenges with their machines, right? Machine as a service makes sure that they have a motivation for monitoring those assets, for for engaging with their clients, for getting that feedback quickly, because they have they have an incentive to help their customer throughout the entire life cycle. We also see, so OEMs that really desire that partnership and that intimacy with their customer, we think this is a great solution for them. That may not be a fit for everybody in every scenario. I certainly can think of folks where, they would see this as a risk, right? This is another thing I have to sell against. I'm selling the lowest possible machine and I'm cutting every corner and I'm trying to deliver the absolute bargain basement spec sheet price, for performance level. And I'm trying to get them to buy my machine because I'm taking that approach. It may not be the best for them. It probably won't be. Because when they start having to price it based on their ability to achieve a result, all of a sudden the playing field becomes much more level. And so it's not just the ability to deliver a machine in a spec sheet, but the ability to help your customer achieve those results over time. That's going to, I'd say, gear the solution towards the organizations that have the capacity to actually do that, versus the ones that are just trying to undercut the price point in the market.
So it's not for the budget OEMs, is what I'm hearing in many cases.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty big net to cast to just say
Sure.
It's not for budget OEMs. Really it changes the conversation from, is it the person trying to sell the cheapest machine, or is it, then no, but I don't think any reputable organization is not out there intending to sell the cheapest possible machine. They're all trying to meet the customer's requirement as they understand it, right? But it definitely, because it's not just focused on the upfront capital, and it really extends the whole concept of total cost of ownership to get to a number of what is it per production. It creates kind of a common playing field and a common comparison between OEMs, where today you might get a price point in the market here and a price point here, and these guys have these features and these support capabilities and this domain expertise, and these guys have a whole different package. It's very hard to compare those things. So it creates a level playing field and makes it easier for end users to assess, right? What am I actually paying for? What is its cost on a per unit basis? And allows them to more confidently and more quickly make the purchasing decision, so they can begin to automate faster. And that's what we believe the market needs, right?
Leveling the playing field for equipment manufacturers so you can really compare apples to apples was certainly a much better thought process than my not for budget OEMs comment there a second ago.
Right. So what is budget? What are you hoping to achieve? Right. If I'm, one lens to look at it through, Mike, this like contract manufacturing, right? The same reasons that an end user might say, hey, instead of buying all the capital equipment and taking all the risk, I'm just going to go to a contract manufacturer for this element, right? Because then I know exactly what I'm paying on a per unit basis, right? And so in between, I take all the risk, I buy all the capital equipment, I run it, I maintain it, I operate it, and I incur all the operating and capital costs of that. And I just completely operationalize it all because I outsource it. In between those two concepts and choices today is machine as a service, where you have the advantages of having all that in-house under your roof within your operating footprint, right? So you don't have the logistics costs, you don't have the issues with a line of sight to where the production process is because it's in somebody else's facility and I ship the primary products off to them to do the value add, right? But you still have you're still operationalizing the expense, you're still paying for product produced, right? And so that's where machine as a service, I think, really fits as a very attractive choice that isn't outsourced at all or in-house at all. It's kind of a combination of both, right? It has elements of both financially and from an operating budget perspective.
Another great point. Didn't necessarily expect to get into that here in the checklist, but I like that it offers that in between solution. One another thing I'm thinking of in terms of checklist is who's involved in this decision. Because we're talking finance. Certainly, there's a CFO sitting at the table for this. Who are the main parties that need to be involved when it comes to evaluating a machine as a service program at an equipment manufacturer?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, these decisions are financial decisions. And so the financial leadership and business leadership that's accountable for the for the P&L is important to have a seat at the table. And then there's a whole host of kind of the traditional organizations that support the current process. And so those organizations need to be pulled in as well. All right. It's not a panacea. It's not a magic wand, right? You still definitely need the operations team and the engineering team to confirm that the solution offered by the OEM is, looks and feels like it's going to be the right thing. Even doing it as machine as a service isn't a victory if the machine shows up and it never runs apart, right? You're still investing time and energy to get that equipment in. There's a opportunity, a cost associated with that because you're not doing something else. So there's certainly still a measure of diligence that's required. And so those teams absolutely have a role to play in this as well. So I would see that the procurement organization within an end user, this is another tool, another mechanism that has different characteristics than their choices today. It's another different way that solves a lot of challenges and fundamentally shifts the risk calculation of deploying it, but it doesn't eliminate the risk. But it definitely offloads a tremendous amount of the risk that right now they have to do a lot of work to validate. They can offload a lot of that, move forward faster and with more confidence to deploy advanced automation technology to improve the operating performance of their facilities.
The next comment or the next question I've got comes from our own VP of Business Development here at SteamChain, Zach Tradow. And, he's asking about sales compensation. How does this play into a machine as a service decision? Because I've got to think if, I've been a sales guy in my career, obviously Zach is asking this from his perspective too. If I'm someone that's in sales for an OEM, I'm used to selling a machine and getting a commission check on it based on those as payments. So I don't want to get too far into it. I want you to answer this.
Yeah. I mean, it's very traditional setup, right? And so, you're when you start thinking through operational readiness for an OEM to put these programs together, you really need to look at the various different organizations and how it impacts them. And sales is a big one, and one that is critically important to the success of these programs. And so, yeah, I haven't met a sales guy yet that is gonna sell something with less commission than they'd otherwise get if they sold it a different way. And so, thinking about how you do sales compensation for OEM salespeople to make sure they're comfortable that they're not harming their own financial interests by selling machine as a service is definitely a critical step in that you need to evaluate to ensure that you're successful with these programs. The promise for those salespeople is that because of the mechanism of machine as a service, because you're evaluating it over time, and because the revenue over time is undoubtedly higher because it's a bundled solution in the majority of cases that includes service, that includes in some cases the capital, that includes warranties and kind of the total life cycle costs. Figuring out a sales compensation model where they're made equal on the upfront sale, right? But have recurring commissions as that contract performs, as the machine as a service contract performs, creates a mechanism that ensures that your salespeople are still very engaged with their customer base, that they're not just showing up when a new machine opportunity is there, but they're really showing up to talk to the customer about all the different ways that machine as a service can help improve their business. So you're constantly looking for new ways, and they become kind of the point person for the relationship at the account, not just when they need a new machine, but over the life cycle of that installed base.
Love that. We've covered a lot on this checklist, from the people involved to, the characteristics of the company, technology, financials. Is there anything we've missed that's an important element of this list to be ready for a machine as a service program?
As you're evaluating, there's so many companies out there today that are evaluating their IoT strategy, their industrial Internet of Things strategy, or Industry 4.0 strategy. And look, I think the thing to focus on is not the technology. It's not IoT for the sake of IoT, right? And so adding remote connectivity, adding the ability to manage features and turn on and off capabilities, integrating service into your offering using technology. I think the smart OEMs right now are not just thinking about how do I connect the machine to the internet, kind of, hey, I got dashboards and I've got data, but how does that data create a business model that's sustainable, right? So I'm not just adding cost to my machine because now I have pretty pictures and graphs and charts, but how do those graphs and charts tie out to a business model that helps our organization as an OEM create more value for the end user, and thereby, of course, achieve better financial performance for our organization. The other thing I'll leave you with is, for OEMs that are looking at this, one of the things that I've always found as a difficult balancing act for OEMs is cash management. We're talking about high dollar capital equipment, and that's a fairly volatile market, right? When you've got a deep backlog that you're working off of, it's great when you've got the orders coming in, but that's assuming that next quarter sells more machines than the quarter before, right? Growth is all about selling more capital assets, so you're constantly chasing new accounts, new opportunities. But really, the gold, in my opinion, is when you can figure out how to profit from your installed base, right? An annuity model, and shifting from a capital equipment sales organization, kind of a big game hunting approach, to a farming approach where you're planting seeds and letting them grow over time, I think is exactly the kind of transition that the industry needs to better support their end user clients, to introduce more automation faster to the end user markets, and is really core to the promise of Industry 4.0, right? Mm-hmm. It can't just be Industry 4.0 technology. It has to be Industry 4.0 business model first. The technology follows the business model, not the other way around.
Yeah, no, it's, when I look at it that way, you're really speaking the language of the as a service world. That's why these software as a service companies are so valuable and do so well, is because they have an annuity business model. And this is creating a way for equipment manufacturers to really finally have that for the first time.
Yeah. And it's, these business models are not new business models. These concepts are not new concepts. What is fresh about this is the application of it in what is a very traditional market of manufacturing. And so there's some nuances and some challenges, of course, and those are the things that SteamChain addresses by automating the entire business process from the point of collection of the data on the machine all the way through the execution of the financial transaction, doing so in a way that's completely automated and customizable, so that you're not, adding a tremendous amount of bureaucratic activity in order to support these models. So it can be done very efficiently and very, very effectively.
So we've got a great checklist now. I'm sure when you have conversations with equipment manufacturers, you still get objections, or, someone that's like, we love the idea of machine as a service, but we can't do it now because of X, Y, or Z reason. What are, 1, 2, or 3 of the top objections that you hear?
The biggest challenge is how to manage the capitalization of the asset. And we solve that in a number of different ways, but hey, Mike, I'll state it as a story, right? The story is, hey, Mike, we love it. We think it's great. We think it's spot on. And we think that's the way the market is going. But as an OEM, I can't afford to build a bunch of machines, put them out in the field to get paid back on a recurring revenue basis, because that's just not how my business is set up today. I need the installed base to generate the cash to pay for the machines that I'm going to build. I can't just go out of pocket infinitely on that. And every OEM and their financial situation is different. So you've got extremes on both ends. The ones that just don't see how they could do it for one machine. You have other OEMs that can build a small program within their overall business because they have the financial flexibility to make those investments. And then you have the OEMs that have the depth of balance sheet that allows them to do this continuously out of the gate. But it's that gap in the transition that's the hardest. And SteamChain definitely recognizes that and is continuously engaging with the financial services industry to provide options for how these things get capitalized and who owns the asset and the risk of performance of that asset in part on the capitalization.
Is there ever an objection associated with, say, the timing of it? Someone saying it's like, this looks great, but it's something we're going to do. This looks like something that's 2 or 3 years down the line for us.
I don't hear that so often. I think
Okay.
in reality, it's more of a, we want to do it. Resources right now don't allow us to move forward, but we got you on the radar screen. We're going to get to this one. We think it's good. Um, I don't think anybody's looking at it and saying, hey, the technology isn't ready, right? I mean, in a lot of ways, the technology has really led the business model. There's so many great suppliers of automation architectures, of gateway devices, of all the different cloud-based services and dashboarding capabilities, and we can work in those environments. We handle a piece of that, which is the processing of the collection of the data, the computation of the financial results based on contract, and clearing those financial transactions. And so that can work alongside of the existing technology. And we leverage a lot of industry standard technology, whether that be working with Allen Bradley control systems or E1 gateway devices or industrial computers from any number of manufacturers. People aren't really hung up on the technology not being capable of delivering these business models. I think the state of the market today is that the technology is there and everybody's trying to figure out now, all this connectivity and connected machinery is great. And we see the promise of the technology, but what's the business model, right? Why? And, why do I put these devices on? Why do I collect this data? What do I do with the data once I have it? And how do I make sure that not only supports my business, but supports my customer's business as well? It needs to be valuable to them. And so it definitely gets into a more complex dialogue, and a dialogue that I think is worth having for any organization right now. And of course, we're happy to speak with anybody that would like to learn more about what we do at SteamChain and how we help clients kind of frame up those business models and deploy the technology and introduce machine as a service within their markets.
And I think anyone that's made it this far in the video or has read the associated blog post with this discussion, they'll have been going through that checklist on their own. So the next step after the checklist, what would be your call to action, Mike?
Yeah, reach out, check out our website. Obviously, we do have a form on our website, whether you're an end user looking to acquire manufacturing equipment and, would like some options for machine as a service, or you're an OEM that wants to put together a machine as a service program, and want some information about what that may look like. We're at the ready to answer any questions you have and can engage immediately, and add you to our growing list of OEMs that offer SteamChain based machine as a service to your clients.
Love that. Well, you can find all of that at steamchain.io. And Mike, thank you for today's conversation.
Thank you, Chris.